I have a bit of an introduction slide on myself once we get going here. So, but I'll tell you a little bit about me. My name is Joe Bauer. I work for Price Systems. I have been working for Price now for about 4 years. Prior to that, I was active duty Air Force and working in the program offices here at Wright-Patterson. So we're mainly in the F-22 program office, focusing in on hardware modernization for the Raptor program. So I'll just leave it at that. I'll add a little bit more as we get going throughout the demonstration.
The mouse is yours, so you can start whenever you like.
Alrighty. Well, thank you, Megan, for the intro, and welcome today to our webinar on TruePlanning 2016, hosted by ICEA and delivered to you by Price Systems. Alright, so today we'll talk, we've already talked about myself enough, I think. We'll tell you how to contact Price Systems. Very important should you have any questions after this webinar regarding anything you see here today. We'll talk just for a brief moment on the Estimation Systems Integration Framework, or ESI. And the ESI is essentially how we do business at Price, how we support our customers through our services, support, and tools. And then we'll go to the fun part of the webinar where we'll deliver a live demo of TruePlanning, and we'll highlight all the main enhancements and features in the 2016 release. Of course, saving some time, as Megan mentioned, for questions at the end. All right, this is me. I've told you most everything you need to know about me. I did go through the AFIT program, the Air Force Institute of Technology Cost Analysis graduate program here at Wright-Pat before working in the program offices, retired out of Wright-Patterson and just stayed put in Dayton. In fact, where I'm working at now in our satellite office, we are literally just 2 minutes down the road from all the major program offices here at Wright-Pat. So that's my day in and day out workload, is supporting all of those Air Force programs, among other agencies. So a very important slide. This is how you can get in contact with Price Systems if you have any questions at all about anything you see here today or anything about TruePlanning in general. At the top half, you see the technical support and other contact info. This is for our main headquarters in Mount Laurel, New Jersey. But if you ever want to reach out to me directly with any questions at all, feel free to reach me in the Dayton office. My work phone and email is shown down here at the bottom of the screen. All right, so let's talk about the Estimation Systems Integration Framework, or ESI. As I mentioned earlier, this is how we support our users throughout the estimating process. You'll notice that the support that we offer does mimic the cyclical nature of cost estimating, from data capture, normalization, analysis, all the way through modeling and execution, and that all-important step of capturing those actuals back into the pool so our future estimates can be more accurate. Today we're going to focus on one subset of the ESI framework, namely steps 4 and 5, where we'll see the major enhancements to our parametric estimation framework, TruePlanning 2016. And I will bring this slide back up at the end of the demonstration so you can fire away with questions, but also so you can copy down that contact information if you do need to reach out to us later on. All right, so what I'd like to do is first talk about the demonstration as a whole. It will be a bit fast-moving, and the intention of this webinar is to briefly highlight key improvements in the TruePlanning 2016 framework. And to be clear, we assume the audience has some familiarity with TruePlanning. However, just in case some of you are completely new to TruePlanning, I'll just spend a couple of minutes talking about the primary estimating methodologies and capabilities within TruePlanning at a very, very high level, and then we'll jump into the changes for TruePlanning 2016. First, let me state that TruePlanning in and of itself is not a parametric model. In fact, it is a framework. It's a robust framework that the user can then include our parametric models into that framework and take into account all of their tailoring in terms of labor rates, schedule, escalation, all within a very easy, comprehensive framework. I'll just add a couple of cost objects through a very quick and easy drag and drop functionality. And what we're building on the left-hand side is a representation of whatever we happen to be estimating. And in this case, we have some piece of hardware and some piece of software we are estimating in TruePlanning right now, the development and production and sustainment, if applicable, of those two components. We're also estimating the integration, assembly, and test of those two components together. And we're also estimating any system-level costs, such as program management, data requirements, and system engineering. We have the ability to go in and tailor the inputs for each one of these cost objects specifically, but I'd like to focus in on the estimating methodologies that are behind TruePlanning, regardless if it's the new 2016 version or a previous version. We utilize two methodologies: parametric modeling, as I mentioned already, and something called activity-based costing. And I'll expand these guys over here on the left-hand side just to show an example of that. And I'll come down and open up the hardware component and the software component and expand these so we can see some lower level details of these two simple icons that I dragged over, because in reality they're much more than an icon. It's actually a meta model with a lot of capability built into that. For starters, we have built into our cost objects all of the activities that one would typically execute to create that deliverable. For an example, for our hardware component, you see activities geared towards hardware development and production, whether it's development engineering, production manufacturing, all the way through maintenance activities. For software, likewise, we have requirements analysis, we have code and unit test, we have qualification test, etc. Now for each of these activities, we have built in already to our cost objects a set of resources that are assigned to the activity. And think of this as these are the necessary skill sets or material or people types that we need to execute the activities, and then we have the activities that are needed to execute that deliverable. So this is an example of the activity-based costing in TruePlanning. The parametrics or the CERs or algorithms within TruePlanning are actually down at this level, at the activity and resource level. Through your customization and description of our hardware components or software components, whether it's weights, quantities, complexities, code types, we can very quickly generate system level and very low level results tabularly, as well as through charts, walk through sets of key metrics that are calculated for you automatically at each run of the model, and look at schedule, which you are able to fine-tune and set specific end dates and start dates for any activity in the model, all the way through risk analysis right here within one comprehensive framework. So that is literally a 4 or 5 minute boiled down demo of the capabilities and methodologies behind TruePlanning 16, just for some of the folks that may be brand new to it. So let me change course here, and what I'm going to focus in on now is not just TruePlanning, but what has changed in TruePlanning 2016 specifically. And we have a number of changes here, and I'll break this up into two parts for this part of the demo. We'll showcase some of the improvements geared towards ease of use, and the second part will demonstrate specific capability enhancements to the framework. This list is not all-inclusive, and we've been pretty busy since our TruePlanning 2014 release to make our products even better. Now, if you see something that strikes your fancy and you'd like a deeper dive, feel free to give us a call and we'll set something up. Or if you happen to be headed to Atlanta for the ICEA conference in a couple of weeks, we will certainly have a booth there, and a lot of us, including myself, will be happy to sit down with you and walk through something in more detail. All right, so I've opened up another instance of TruePlanning, and as I open this up, we immediately get to two major improvements in ease of use. First, TruePlanning templates or example projects will be available for a wide range of typical aerospace and defense applications. And you can see here we have 60 templates built for you. And if you've ever struggled with how to get started on a TruePlanning project, you can now get a pre-built product breakdown structure immediately. And if you consistently use your own standardized format, we can help you get that built into TruePlanning as a readily accessible template if you choose. Again, the templates provide that instant answer to how do I get started. So if we look at just the missile templates, and I selected missile here, and we see 9 choices, I'm going to pick on this MIM-23, which is a medium-range surface-to-air missile. And if I choose to open that template up, we see a description, rationale for creating this template. Just to be clear, all of the templates in the TruePlanning 2016 framework are constructed to give you a representation of what that product breakdown structure could look like. And it is done with top-level, publicly available information in terms of weights or schedule or top-level costs. So it's there to get you started, and we'll take a look at this missile here in just a second. But I've already downloaded this template. I'm actually going to open this up in another manner because it highlights a second big improvement to ease of use. TruePlanning 2016 is now using a document-centric project management system. What does that mean? It means that now you can save, close, open TruePlanning projects just like you do with any other common software, such as Word or Excel. You no longer have to install the SQL database or rely on a SQL server when saving projects. You no longer have to import or export projects between TruePlanning and some other file location. So if I want to open up a file, regardless of where it is saved at, a thumb drive, my desktop, a CD, SharePoint, it doesn't matter. It will open, close, save, and so forth, just like any other typical Office application. All right, so does this eliminate the SQL? For those of you who like the SQL database that's installed along with TruePlanning, that's up to you. You actually have that capability to install SQL database. When installing TruePlanning, you certainly may do so. I'll tell you 2 benefits of eliminating that reliance on SQL is, first of all, easier installation of the software, faster installation, and certainly faster certification or approval to operate that software within your organization if you happen to be a new user. All right, so you can now see the difference between that very small token example I had up initially and how much more comprehensive and complex this product breakdown structure is. And once again, this was a template that is available to you through TruePlanning 2016. If you are developing a cost estimate for a medium-range surface-to-air missile and don't know where to get started, we now have a starting point for you at a fairly detailed level. All right, we will talk about a few other ease-of-use improvements that are in 2016 as we start to look at all of the inputs that are in this template and results and schedule and so forth. The scheduling is the first section of this that I'd like to address. We know that if you've used TruePlanning before, we do allow the estimator to discretely control activity start and end dates, as well as escalation rates and other things like that. We also know it can be tedious if I need to go in there and affect local changes for specific start and end dates. I can certainly go to my input sheet, go to my schedule tab for any cost object and make those changes. But I want to talk to you about a much quicker and better way to address that if you simply need to box in phases of the estimate. In other words, bucket in maybe the development between certain years or the production between other years to correspond to budget or appropriations available in any given year. Rather than going through that manual start and end date for a range of activities, we can now use something called phase sets, which you see a hot link here right on the Schedule tab. And we'll do this much quicker and easier. Phase sets, when I open this up, you see the phase set menu option pop up, and we basically now have the ability to divide up the effort or cost within this estimate between development, production, and O&S. For each of these phases, you can determine whether schedule penalties apply, override underlying activity dates you might have entered manually, set specific escalation rates for development or production, and I'll talk more about escalation rates in a bit. But let's show an example, and having this schedule result in the background will be very helpful. This is obviously it's a historical program, started in the late 50s and ended in the late 70s, but what we want to do is take this template and set schedule durations that are going to match our program of record for our new missile system. And we will, let's say that development starts January 1st of 2016, and let's just say we'll be very optimistic and say development is only going to be 3 years long, and it ends December 31st of 2018. So you have development occurring 2016, 2017, 2018. All right, the very next morning we start our production, and so on January 1st of 2019 production starts, and let's just say that that's going to go for 10 years. So that should be December 31st of 2028. So 3 years of development, 10 years of production. We can override any lower level dates that may be in this template. Take a look at what happens behind me in the schedule results when I close this tab. So we can now take a template that existed based on a historical program that we have actuals on, and we can now start tailoring this to meet our need for our new weapon system. You can clearly see with the Gantt chart here, all of my development activities are occurring in the time frame that I set. We also have all of our production activities occurring during that 10-year span. So a very powerful tool to allow you to set those top-level dates to align up with the appropriations that we are all likely very familiar with. You might have noticed one other option on here on the phase sets. Let me talk for a moment about milestones. There are specific milestones that typically occur in a program. Milestone A or Milestone C or PDR or CDR. How do we include those into our schedule and utilize that information when looking at our results? Well, now in TruePlanning 2016, we can add milestones or markers to the schedule for significant events. And I'll add one here, and this is all notional. Let's do Milestone A, and let's just pick that January 1st, 2016 date. And I'll add another one here for, we'll say Milestone C, and we'll just pick January 1st of 2016. And let's throw one more in here, maybe a FOC date or full operational capability. Maybe after we start producing our missiles here, maybe a year later or so. Just for argument's sake, we'll say that's January 1st of 2020. Once again, keep an eye on what happens behind you here in the Schedule Results tab. When I close this, you will see now your milestones with your customized name and markers included on the Schedule tab. So you can also see efforts that occur in your estimate between these milestones and our results. Speaking of results, there are many, many improvements to the results and charting capabilities within TruePlanning 2016, and I will talk to those right now. In the results, first let me address the milestones that we saw up there a moment ago. They're based on the options that you have here, whether you're looking at cost or labor, and what you select in the rows and the columns. There are literally thousands of different ways to look at results at any level within your program. And we've only given you more capability now in 2016. Let me take a look at those milestones across time. And what we see now in the results is the effort that is occurring between these milestones. So the markers that you created, the specific dates that you've entered in the phase sets, now become result views that you can either look at through tabular results or charts to make better sense of the effort that is occurring. Maybe you divide development up into 2 or 3 phases, or maybe you divide it up into 5 phases. This is a way for you to track the effort that occurs between your customized bits of time, if you will. Alrighty, we'll talk about another addition in the results, which is now the ability to see multi-dimensional output. And we'll also talk about TrueMapper in just a second too. In the Customize View button and for the results, in the past we had the ability to look at one item on the rows and one item in the columns, but now we have the ability to almost create a pivot table view, if you will. So if I wanted to look at the entire estimate all together, but I wanted to see each phase, whether it's development or production, broken out separately, now we can do that. We can choose to look at this by phase, and then within each phase we can look at our product breakdown structure and phase this across the top by time. Very simply, now instead of just looking at the product breakdown structure as a whole, we can subdivide this into specific appropriations. Here's my development for those 3 years. Obviously down below you'll see the production across time, and if we did have the O&S estimate built in this template, you would see the O&S example down below. So one thing I'd like to point out is the format that this is in right now, my results, is representative of what is in my product breakdown structure over on the left-hand side. For any of us that deal with the DoD, we are very familiar, likely, with the work breakdown structure, or specifically the MIL standard 881C work breakdown structure. So how do we get from a TruePlanning view, a PBS, and look at results within TruePlanning in a WBS? In the past, in TruePlanning 2014, we had an application called TrueMapper, where you could walk costs across from TruePlanning to your cost element structure, and you could do that external to TruePlanning. Now we've integrated the two, and I'll show you an example of that. So using the TrueMapper that is integrated within TruePlanning, I can now take my TruePlanning estimate, and for any level of this estimate, I can see any of the inputs or outputs that were used, and I can import my own cost element structure, any structure that I estimate to. In our case, we'll use Appendix C of the 881, and all of these templates will be available to you in 2016. And we can also talk to you about customizing and creating your own. It's essentially an Excel flat file that is the background of that, so it's not hard to do at all. Now you'll see the way we're modeling it in TruePlanning, and you'll see the way that we probably need to get it to in order to report it to our stakeholders. TrueMapper, not to go into too much detail, but it is a tool that allows you to walk costs across from one estimate to the other. Simple drag and drop functionality. And I'll scroll down a bit down here, and here you can see my primary structure. And when I map it, you'll notice some things happen down below. Primary structure, and I've mapped it from one estimate to another cost element structure, and you can see not only what was mapped because of the color coding, but you can now see where it's been mapped to in my new requirement. This is very helpful because the way we model costs in TruePlanning, I mentioned to you earlier, in this cost object at the top, we're modeling system engineering, program management, and data all within one cost object. In the 881C and likely in your own cost element structures, you may have to divide that up and estimate or at least report system engineering, program management, and data as separate cost elements. So this is the tool that allows you to break this up and walk those costs across. So that was just one example. Let me show you a fully mapped file. I'll bring in the file that I'd already mapped just in the interest of time and show you how you can use that in TruePlanning. Now I can look at my results, but instead of looking at this by the TruePlanning cost objects, let's look at this by the 881C that I had fully mapped. And as you can see now, it is a TruePlanning estimate on the left-hand side. However, my results have been mapped to the 881C on the right-hand side, and I'm looking at that inside of TruePlanning by phase, by time. So the development is up at the top, then the production is out to the right there for 10 years and so forth. So this is, again, a powerful integration now of two very powerful tools together, TrueMapper and TruePlanning. Alrighty, speaking of results, well, I'll talk about that in the next part. I'll switch gears on you again a little bit, and we'll now focus in on the capability enhancements within some of our specific cost objects. Namely, I'll focus in on the hardware component, then I'll talk about some for our software component, and then I will wrap it up with talking just a little bit about our IT services catalog. Alrighty, let's pick on the hardware first here, and let me go to our primary inputs for the model. At last year's ICEA conference, if you happen to go out to San Diego, you might have had the opportunity to attend our session on cost estimating challenges in additive manufacturing. This is something that Price Systems, along with Pat Malone from MCR, put together. We mentioned we are in the process of including cost research into a future release of TruePlanning. Just like the title of the webinar implies, the future is here. We've actually built a specific calculator to address additive manufacturing environments within TruePlanning itself. To be clear, you still have all of the calculator choices you had before to model the manufacturing complexity, which is really a function of the manufacturing process and material types and number of parts and some other things. But now we can look at this and see what the effect of additive manufacturing processes have on our estimate. We have the ability to choose broad material types, and then as we make the choices at the top of the calculators or wizards, it will influence all the choices that are available in lower levels. So we can pick specific material classes, even pick a specific manufacturer of a printer and a specific printer. Right now, the scope is somewhat limited on what manufacturers build printers that actually can do this type of work. And as you can imagine, each of these printers has different requirements for different sizes and so forth, different capital costs. And we have actually done the research in conjunction with some higher learning institutions to build that database within TruePlanning. So now not only are we capturing the capital cost and amortization of that capital cost across your need, but we are also, of course, able to identify the technical specifications, complexities, sizes, so forth, of whatever you happen to be building in an additive manufacturing environment. And there is an all-important step of post-processing which may have to occur. based on the additive manufacturing component, and you have the ability to select whether these typical steps are included or excluded from your processing. And as I make these changes here to size and weight and surface area and so forth, our calculator automatically generates for you a host of key cost driver inputs that are then used in our TruePlanning hardware component to generate cost and schedule, but the results are tailored to the uniqueness of that additive manufacturing environment. All right, I'm going to take this opportunity to also talk about one other thing in the results side that I told you I would save for later. Let me hit cancel here for just a second. So let's pretend that our primary structure for this model is going to be something that we are going to build through typical normal manufacturing processes. Maybe it's bent aluminum or machined titanium or whatever the case may be. Within TruePlanning now, let me add another cost object. Within TruePlanning now, we have the ability to include or exclude any components in our product breakdown structure. Why would that even be helpful? Let's say that we're trying to run an analysis of alternatives. And this primary structure, maybe we're going to build it with traditional manufacturing processes, or maybe we're going to build it with additive processes. Let's include both of those in our model and run through very quick what-if drills or analysis of alternatives. Not only that, but what about make or buy scenarios? Do we make this in-house? Maybe this is a COTS component, and we decide to look at what is the impact on cost and schedule if we choose to make it in-house versus buy it, or make it out of aluminum or make it out of titanium. What if we machine it? What if we additively manufacture it? Now you can actually build all of those scenarios right within TruePlanning in your product breakdown structure and simply choose to include or exclude any of those choices and see the results or the impacts on your cost and schedule. So very powerful capability there. All right, another hardware capability improvement that I'll talk about is we've teamed up with industry leaders, industry and government leaders to provide you calibrated data points for unmanned space hardware. While we do offer an entire cost object catalog tailored specifically to space missions, we recognize that not all folks may have access to that based on their particular license agreement. However, within our equipment type wizard, you now have the ability to utilize some of those calibrated data points for some unmanned space, whether it's planetary or Earth-moving components. And again, once you make choices at the higher level in our wizards, you can pick lower level inputs that correspond to that. And what you see, once again, is a host of cost drivers that are calibrated based on recent data collection and analysis. As I mentioned before, result of teaming up with those industry and government leaders in this area. The third component I'd like to talk about with the hardware cost object is the addition of some lower level inputs specifically for the recurring production. And we'll look down at our hardware input sheet, and I'll keep picking on the primary structure here. And if we go down, in the past we've always had the capability to affect changes to specific labor learning curves or material curves. What we've done now is allow you to have control over the manufacturing process index, now broken out between labor and material. And the MPI, or the manufacturing process index, is a direct scaler that we can use on the theoretical first unit cost, or the T1, in our model. We also have the ability to determine at what unit we want to start in our learning curve. Are we starting at unit 1, or are we starting at unit 11 or unit 21, to take into account that maybe our units might be from a larger production run, but maybe a specific stretch of that production run. Additionally, we have the Stanford B factor. This is a standardized factor created by the good folks at Stanford that talk about the transfer of learning from your prototypes to your production units. If you don't enter a value, TruePlanning will calculate a notional value for you that you can then either change or utilize. And essentially what we're looking at here is if you have, for example, 10 prototypes and only 10 production units, obviously you're going to have a good impact on your production units, a good transference of learning, because you've done so many prototypes and you're only building a small number of production units. You're likely to benefit from that learning transference. If you're building one prototype and you're building 5,000 production units, an extreme example, you can see where this might not be applicable. But nonetheless, you now have the control at every single level in the product breakdown structure for hardware components to take that into account. Alrighty, I am going to move on away from the hardware component, and I'll address some capability enhancements that we have included for our software cost object. First of all, very simply, in the choices of languages, we had an already expansive list of language choices for software development built into TruePlanning. We've added 14 languages onto that list. As you're using TruePlanning, or as you're looking through our demos, or come and visit us at the booth, let us know if there is a language that you frequently use that you do not see in our list. And that is good information for us to have and point us towards further research. The second topic I'll talk about with software is the ability to account for any outsourcing of the development or the maintenance activities that occur for software estimating. And we have the ability to determine whether something is done in-house or outsourced, or if it's some mix of the two, we have the ability to determine how much of it is outsourced or done in-house. That goes back to our activity-based costing I talked about earlier. What we've done now for every single activity in our software component is include a resource for that contractor effort. And it gives you the ability, and let me just walk that down to completion here. Pull up that software component. It now gives you the ability for any one of these software activities to determine what part of that is done outsourced, and it allows you to set those specific rates and factors, labor rates and so forth, that apply to that contracted work. So much higher fidelity in the estimate, because now you can account for these subtle differences between the two. All right, the third major improvement to the software component that I'll talk about, and then we'll head over to the IT services, is an enhancement to an existing software sizing methodology that we had in TruePlanning 2014. If you've ever used TruePlanning for software sizing, you know that we have not only source lines of code, but we can take into account function points, use case conversion points, cosmic function points, etc. In the past, we had RICE objects calculator. So RICE stood for reports, interfaces, conversions, and extensions or enhancements. After further research and looking at trends within the industry, there is in fact an FW at the end of RICE nowadays, and we've enhanced our calculator to capture that trend within the industry. So now you see the typical 4 components that we had previously: reports, interfaces, conversions, and enhancements, and we've now added the capability to model effort or size of that software component based on the amount of forms and workflow and the complexity of those components. All right. So that is a list of the major enhancements to the software component. We talked about the additional software languages. We looked at the new RICE FW sizing calculator, and we talked about the ability to account for outsourcing efforts for development or maintenance activities. So I will end the live demo with a quick primer on the IT services cost object catalog that you see here. If you've used TruePlanning in the past to estimate the cost and schedule requirements for IT infrastructure, don't worry, that catalog is still available to you and will be in TruePlanning 2016. What we've done now since our last release is a lot of research and analysis and improvements on how we model these typical IT infrastructure components. In the IT services catalog, it may look like you're seeing double, but in fact what we've done is broken out each of these types of estimating or cost objects into two components. One component we focus in on the development or the implementation, if you will, of that particular item, and the second cost object with the same name is focusing in on the ongoing operations or sustainment of that component. So now it's a much more visibility into the cost and be able to have a greater degree of control over the cost of IT estimating, because we've broken it out into those specific components, and we've done things like take enterprise software and divide that up into specific use cases, whether it's application development through database services. I don't want to give too much away on the IT services cost object catalog. Stay tuned, because Price Systems is actually hosting its own webinar in July on just that, where you'll hear from Emmanuel Mary from our Price Systems International on the use cases of this IT services catalog, details on the research and analysis that went into what is now known as the IT services catalog. But again, rest assured, if you still want to use this existing IT infrastructure catalog, it will remain in TruePlanning 2016. All right, so I wanted to make sure I saved enough time, and it looks like I'm about 43 minutes or so. So this does conclude our live demo of TruePlanning 2016. As I mentioned before, it was a 50,000-foot view, but we will have a virtual army there at the ICEA conference, and we'll be more than happy to set aside with you and walk through at a very deep level on anything you might have seen here today. So I'll turn it back over to Megan. Thanks again for attending. Don't hesitate to reach out for Price Systems for anything, or me directly if you have any questions, and I will see you all in Atlanta.
Cool. Thanks so much, Joe. We got a couple questions in from Stuart Swagan. I'm actually going to unmute Stuart so that he can ask them. Let's see. Stuart, can you hear us, or can we hear you?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yep, my first question was just relative to the our older, TruePlanning 2014 files and so on. When we start using 2016, will the, the opening and closing of the files, that improvement in simplicity, so we don't have to use the import-export, will that be applicable to our older files as well?
So that's a great point. All of the TruePlanning versions have backward compatibility. So if you've created the file in 2014, you'd have no problem opening it up in 2016. To be clear, what will likely happen if you start to migrate away from that SQL database setup, you may have to go through, exporting whatever files you have in the SQL database one time to some location, so that TruePlanning 2016 can find it wherever it's at.
Okay, so we'd probably do well to set up a transition activity to do that specifically for any of our users, and and then just kind of move on from there, and life gets a lot easier.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. I have one other question. I know we've had some good discussions with you guys on additive manufacturing. Do I understand that capability will be coming later, or is that included in the initial rollout?
That is included in the initial rollout of TruePlanning 2016, which, just in case anybody has a question on that, we're targeted fairly soon after the ICEA conference, probably first week of July.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you. Those were my questions.
Okay. Thank you.
I've been talking on mute, sorry. I was going to give everybody another. Greg Kibbe had asked if you guys can get a copy of the presentation. We're going to put it up on our website, and it'll be available for everyone to download. Jill, will you be sending a copy to the attendees, or would you like me to?
If they want to see the exact one that was done today, you'll have that recording. If anybody doesn't get it, we actually recorded this ahead of time, and we can certainly send that out. Greg or Gary, any of those folks can drop me a line, and I can. Well, gosh, it'd be hard to get it to them. It's probably a 400 megabyte file, but we'll figure something out. Post it up to our website or something like that.
Yeah, and Greg furthered his question by just saying, is there maybe a summary of the enhancements that might be helpful?
Absolutely. On our website, we should already have up, and if we don't, will be up soon. Just a cliff notes of the release enhancements and things like that. I'll double check and make sure that happens.
Perfect. Huan Yen, you are on to ask your question about MultiLot Capability.
Yes. I have a few people with the end. We just want to know, when will the MultiLot Capability reappear in TruePlanning?
That's a fair question. It's not in the 2016 release, but that is certainly on our roadmap. We're hopefully targeting that for maybe a 2017 release or some service release in between the two.
Okay, thank you.
One more. The knowledge network, will that reappear as well?
Great question. And if you've ever had any exposure to our another application, which I didn't show today, called True Findings, what we're actually doing is looking at creating captures of publicly available normalized data sets for folks to use that is very similar, and some of it is part of that knowledge base that we used to have available. But what we're doing is having that massaged a bit so it works actually in conjunction with our data analysis tool, True Findings. That's a long answer to say yes, but we're working on the implementation of that.
We use it as part of our input.
Okay. Hua, is that good for you?
Yeah, I think so. Thank you so much, Megan. Thank you, Joe.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Next up, we have John Hooner. John, you didn't enter your PIN, so I will try to ask the question for you. The question he typed is this a price-to-win function? Is a price-to-win functionality included in this version? So
we certainly can do price-to-win. When we're looking at a price-to-win scenario, TruePlanning is really geared for that in general. It's not really a specific mode or feature within TruePlanning. But if we have to look at what estimate or rather look at the complexity of an item or quantities or certain processes in the software development that may help us get to an estimate that is a target for our company, we can certainly do that. On the other side of that, for price to win, we're also worried about the other guys too, right? So we're doing things like ghosting the competition and looking at what the estimate would be if we used what we assume is our competitors' labor rates and things like that. So price to win is not necessarily a mode in TruePlanning. It is, that capability is absolutely woven throughout that, and I'd be happy to chat more about that one-on-one if anyone wants to give me a call.
Okay, and then next up is Greg Kiviat. He has a couple of questions. Greg.
Hi, Greg.
You're on the line with Price Systems, Greg Kiviat.
Oh, I'm sorry. I had my mute on. That's a bad thing. Okay. Sorry about that. So hi Joe. Thank you for this a good presentation. Two quick questions. O&S cost, right? I saw. I was talking to one of the guys the other day, and I guess you don't have the. Is there I guess a multi-theater capability in TruePlanning, or is that planned to happen? You know, for O&S?
That is planned to happen. Quite honestly, the version that I'm showing today is the beta. So we are working fast and feverishly on getting some more capabilities in there. Greg, quite honestly, I'm going to have to double check and see if the multi-theater capability is going to make the gold release or whether that will be a future upgrade. But I will get back to you.
All right. Other related question: is there? I never really followed. You know, we've been using still H for quite some time, and there's the TOC model add-on is this big spreadsheet. Is there an equivalent type thing planned for TruePlanning and doing a full total ownership cost?
Yeah. In fact, there actually is in TruePlanning 14 right now. There's a total ownership cost object. Let me see. If you look in the Systems Cost Object Catalog, you have what's called the Total Ownership Cost Object. And what this does, particularly for DoD weapon systems, it accounts for all that, what I like to call the other stuff, base operating support, MILCON requirements, even down to the level of the cost for moving the military folks from station to station every year through disposal. So that is something that you could be using actually in the 14 release by including it in at the very top of your product breakdown structure.
I see. Okay. I guess I probably need to play with that or get some training in that if we're going to use that, or at least talk to you guys on how it works.
Sure. Yeah, give me a call anytime.
Thank you.
Okay, Greg, I'm going to turn you back off. I'll just give a couple of beats for anybody else to ask any more questions. Well, I think the silence says it all. Thanks to Joe, and thanks for everybody for spending the time with us today and giving us your lunch hour. Joe, if you want to close it out, it's all you.
Yeah, once again, thanks for attending this webinar. We are really, really excited to get TruePlanning 2016 out there in front of you folks. We really feel that, once again, we need to focus on ease of use and making things easier for you to get started, and also improving some of the capabilities within the framework. And all of these requirements are from our continued support and feedback from the customers. So keep those good conversations going with us, those good suggestions coming, and I look forward to seeing everybody again in Atlanta in a couple of weeks. So thank you, and take care.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks, everyone. Have a good afternoon.